What's the horniest thing you ever did? NSFW. Don't think it'd be the horniest, but here we go. X and I were in her room while the whole family was home. She was not allowed to close the door any time I was over. It was okay to leave it open to the point where even a centimeter gap was left open, it just could not be closed. Her and I were cuddling, and the random horny energy just appeared out of nowhere due to us just being really close to each other. Y'all know the feeling, lol. Next thing you know, both of our bottom halves came off, blanket on, and we went on a mission Bravo 6 going dark with a suppressor because of her family being right there all hanging out in the living room. 2 to 3 minutes later, we heard footsteps and her mom talking directly to my ex as she was approaching and getting closer to the barely opened door. Both of our face lit up and I just swooped my head on her chest and pretended to be asleep while she turned her eyes towards the TV, at the same time rubbing my back. This all happened within 3 to 4 seconds prior to her mom opening the door. Happened very fast. They finished the conversation and her mom left the room. I was still rock hard inside her. Her and I both looked at each other and decided to call it off because we both got scared, lol. Later on I realized her mom probably knew what we were doing just because of the nervousness from my ex's voice and most likely her facial expression. When my wife and I were dating, she's 16, me 17. I snuck over to her house late at night. Her mom had a red car that was really sun-faded. So this night I knocked on her window. Helped her crawl outside and started making out on the side of her house. She showed me that she shaved. It was my first time seeing her like that and I went to town. We were trying to figure out how to do this standing up and decided to lay her face down on the hood of her mom's car. All is done and she goes back to her room. I come over the next day to help her job hunt and she shows me her mom's car in the daylight. Not sure if you know, but heavily oxidized paint on cars really like to absorb the oils from your skin. You can see the silhouette of a girl on the hood of the car. You can make out hand prints, a cheek, her boobs, even her belly button. Her mom didn't notice until she was in town and after driving her car to church. My wife convinced her that someone was playing a prank on her. I saved the day by washing and hand waxing her car. Fast forward a few weeks and I decided to pay my another late night visit. This time it was in the back seat of my Camry, because I had learned my lesson, I guess. She went back inside and went to bed. I started my car. Mind you, this car was flawless and had no mechanical problems ever. I wouldn't hesitate to drive it from California to Florida. When I started it, the solenoid decided to stick and cause my starter to stay in the starting position. Not sure if anyone has heard this before, but it's like sticking a screwdriver in a metal fan blade. Noisy AF. Her mom came running outside, neighbors turning on porch lights and dogs going crazy in the neighborhood. That was fun trying to explain why I was there. LOL. 1980, 19 years old, in the Navy, and I swear, if any one of you starts singing it, so help me. And stationed at the Navy Annex, living at Fort Myer. There was a porn theater not far off base. I put porn in quotes, because they never showed hard X-rated films. The actors' privates actually had a black box over them on the screen. For my age, with extremely limited exposure to porn except for my occasionally beating off to, this was pretty stimulating to a horn dog as I was back then. After leaving a playing one night, there was a telephone booth just outside the theater. I called my then girlfriend, who is now my beautiful wife of nearly 36 years, Colette, via my parents' phone line. Look it up, this is how long distance was done back then. We spoke for a while. We had not yet begun intimacy with each other, but damn, her voice. It was about a 1.5-mile walk back to the barracks, dead quiet, and probably close to midnight. I was horny beyond reason, and I never liked masturbating in the bathroom, and I couldn't in my room because my 2 roommates would definitely notice. Right next to Fort Myers Arlington National Cemetery, and there was a stone wall about 4 feet high and absolutely no one around except the sentry at the guard shack about 1/4 mile up the winded road. I couldn't take it anymore. I was almost painfully erect, leapt over the wall and hid behind a rather huge monument. I did the deed, Thinking of my girlfriend, the movie really wasn't that stimulating or even inspiring. Finished rather quickly and got myself back together, jumped the wall and kept walking back to the barracks. Within the next day or so, walking to my shift at the Navy Annex, curiosity got the better of me and I wanted to know whose graveside I soiled the other evening. I found the monument, walked around to the front, and the name Robert Todd Lincoln stared me right in the face. I honestly don't recall my initial reaction, but I do remember laughing almost all the way to work. It was a good day. Fancied the shit out of this girl in university. She was a wee bit older. She worked in one of the local bars and had a side gig as a suicide girl, so I was borderline obsessed with her. One night, thinking it would be another failed attempt to chat her up, things actually went my way and I ended up back at hers. Not wanting to mess up my chance, I made an absolute meal out of her pussy. Just ate that thing like the cure to cancer was at the back of it. She seemed to love the borderline worship and came really hard. So anyway, I'm thinking now's time for the main event, but she stops, says, "That was wonderful, but I have an early start tomorrow," and then rolls over to go to sleep. So I tried to sleep, but not a chance. My dick stayed hard for ages, the fucker was pulsating. So, I checked to make sure she was out, and then started to very discreetly see to myself. Took ages, but eventually I got close when it hit me. What the fuck am I gonna do with this when it comes out? No tissues or anything by the bed, so I ended up just catching it in my hand. Now I'm looking around this room in the dark for anywhere to deposit this. There's a bin by the bed, but it's an old wire mesh one with no bag, so that's no use. I get my phone out to try and shed some light, but this was back in the day. It was an old 3210 with a dull green glow that would barely startle a gremlin. Meanwhile, like any good sauce, this stuff is starting to separate in my hand and is getting more and more watery. Anyway, this is the moment she decides to wake up and roll over to cuddle. Desperately wanting to see this girl again and with no other options, I took the only avenue left, and hoofed it down my throat. It's actually not as bad as it sounds, though I wouldn't be dipping my chips in it any time soon. The stuff was largely inoffensive. Anyway, that was about 15 years ago at this stage, and we now have 3 beautiful children. LOL. Nah. We had breakfast the next morning, but then she went off to some appointment and I went to class, and I never got so much as her phone number. She'd still flirt and tease me at the bar when I was around, but I never got with her again. I think she got off on just how infatuated I was with her. And another qualifying event just sprung to mind. Roughly 1991, my wife and I moved from my grandmother's house in southwest Philadelphia to a nice one-bedroom apartment, just on the outskirts of Lancaster City, backed up to a huge cornfield, so privacy was never a concern. One night, I had gone to bed early, being exhausted from the day's work for a local uniform company. Yes, fuck you, Joe Garrity. After some time, I don't know if I did fall asleep and woke up or just couldn't sleep, but my wife still wasn't in bed with me yet. I got up and went to the barely open bedroom door and took a peek out into the living room. What I saw my wife doing was, in my opinion, the hottest thing I have ever viewed. There she was, sitting longways on our couch, reading. Her right hand was down the front of her stretch pants, slowly rubbing herself. My jaw fell open and I got so hard, so fast, that it actually hurt. I barely breathed as I watched her pace quicken and her head of long, brown hair cascaded over the arm of the couch, her head back, mouth open in a silent moan, eyes squinting and arching her back as she had what I perceived as a really good orgasm. No, I did not go out and have my way with her, rather, I crept quietly back into bed with this throbbing erection. I didn't know when she was coming to bed, so I didn't risk masturbating in her catching me. So at the time, I was two-faced and ashamed to be caught. It wasn't long before she did cone to bed. I pretended to sleep. She slowly pulled the sheets down and proceeded to give me some of the best oral sex I could ever remember her giving me. Believe me, I did not last long and reciprocated afterwards until she was sated.